Check, check. Okay. So before we begin, I'd just like to ask everyone to place their cell phones on vibrate, please. Please.
Yeah, I know.
Well, if you want to tweet a question, I don't want to stop you. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Red Deer Public Library, I'm pleased to welcome you to this evening's election forum. My name is Nicole Charles, and I will be moderating this event. I would also like to introduce my colleagues, Candace Putnam and Randy Chenoweth, who will be assisting me this evening. I would also like to introduce you to our mayoral candidates, William Horn, Cindy Jeffries, Chad Mason, Dennis Trepanier, and Tara Veer. Welcome and thank you for coming. The format for this evening's debate will be as follows. Each candidate will have 7 minutes to discuss their platform. Then Randy will circulate with the microphone to take questions from the audience, and Candace will be receiving questions from Twitter. For those who are using Twitter, please tweet us using the @ at RDPL so that we can receive your questions. Questions may be asked of a single candidate or of all candidates. And we had a request to have a break because this is from 7 to 9. So at 8 p.m. we'll have a quick 5-minute break. So if anybody needs to go to the washroom, they're out that way. And so the candidates can have a bit of a break. Finally, candidates will have a couple minutes to respond to each question. At approximately 8:45, we will begin to wrap up and ask a final question of the candidates before we close for the evening. So we'll start with our first candidate, William Horn.
Thank you, Nicole. Welcome, everyone. The first thing I'd like to talk about is before you can look at what Red Deer needs to do, you have to look what's going on in the world today, the macroeconomics of everything, the trouble that's in the United States. The World Bank has already warned the federal government of Canada to stop financing growth with mortgages. Growth industry, and it keeps the economy rolling, but we can't grow indefinitely by relying on Canadian households increasing their borrowing relative to our income. Nor can residential investment remain near a record share of gross domestic product. Particularly given signs of overbuilding and overvaluation in the real estate market, growth by debt will be a huge challenge to stop when the interest rates rise. People will start losing their houses. If you're leveraged at $400,000 with $50,000 down, you're going to lose your house when it falls to $300,000 value. Then what are you going to do? Layoffs will start. Economists right now are talking about knocking the US dollar back to 50 cents. If that happens, we lose our #1 trading partner or our dollar devalues as well. You got to consider all those points when you start looking even into our municipal government here in Red Deer. One of the things I would look at is I know that council has been quite good about keeping the level of debt compared to what the province allows. But if our dollar devalues, it'll be very hard to repay that debt. Provincial funding in the city has been cut back, and we need to reevaluate the municipal development plan. It might take a little longer to get the things we need, but we got to get back to basics. We need to strengthen our resolve concerning excessive spending, and we cannot predict when the province will once again resume full municipal funding. Life's basic necessities take priority, and we should be working on those rather than developing. We've done a lot of work downtown. I think it's time the private business stepped up and carried on that work. We don't need to be putting more money into downtown when we have so much more to do. Crime reduction is a big issue. RCMP, I believe, should report to their own entity. The crime prevention program is very good. We must continue to support that. I see room for an enterprise resource planning system. If you Google the top ERP systems, We need one of those in place at City Hall so that we can follow the dollars right from the planning stage to the turn of the key. This manual system, I think, that is now in use is not efficient enough to monitor the dollars and look after our pennies as well. Tenders, bids, and contracts need to be tightened up. I notice in the city that in a lot of contracts, it goes to the lowest bidder. I've worked with a lot of construction associations, and they have one simple line in there: any and all bids may not be accepted. And that's to protect you from the underbidders. Where's your warranty? Where's your guarantee when they go out of business? If their work they do for you breaks down, we have to hire somebody and pay again to get the same project done all over. That doesn't work for me. Bike lanes, well, they've got to go. Lots of places where the bike lanes were put in, you got 30 to 40 foot wide boulevards. If you put in a wider sidewalk there, in Europe what they do is they put a railing in the middle of it. Bikes, skateboards, rollerblades are on the curbside, pedestrians to the inside. When the time comes that it's plowing snow, you pull the railing out and it gives you a place to stack the snow so you don't have to haul it away. Snow removal. The Excel spreadsheet is a good way of calculating the distance from the snow dumping areas from where it's being trucked from. This will save gasoline, man-hours, and maintenance on the equipment. Streets and potholes. We should have a pothole patrol, if you will, that runs right through the springtime and fixes these holes. You hit one and knock your steering out, there goes $200 out of your pocket. You know, it's a simple matter to put one crew on it, maybe two crews full-time. That's all they do, all spring long. The bus routes. The bus routes all terminate in the downtown area. If you want to go from Lancaster to Parkland Mall, it takes you an hour and 10, hour and 20 minutes. Miss a bus, you're 2 hours. I would suggest ring road buses, something that goes down 30th Ave to 67th Street, out to Highway 11, through Edgar Industrial, back down Taylor Drive, and then another ring road bus inside of that, 40th Ave, 67th Street, so that there's crossover there. Then maybe Taylor Drive and up 32nd Street. Could you even have a crisscross on Ross and Gates? And I would like to see the buses run a little later. A lot of people get off at 11 o'clock at night and cannot get transportation home. Affordable available housing is definitely a problem here in the city of Red Deer. We need it for the low income, the handicapped, and also the elderly. Some buildings have given notice to people that are on government assistance, and then as soon as they were out of the building, up went the rents. We need, I would say, 3 high-rises. I can't see them being large square footage, maybe 650, 700 square feet per place, and we need them soon, and they got to be close to major amenities. One thing that I could suggest is that the city might cut back on the piece of property. Find a builder with a heart. Good luck with that one. And I would suggest, like I said, the less square footage will be more economical to build, and an open floor concept. No walls inside of it except maybe for your washroom and a kitchen wall. Thank you very much. That's my platform.
I used to laugh when people used this size of font when I was younger. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Cindy Jeffries. Fellow candidates, what makes a city a great place to live in? What compels us to stay here? People become attached to a place when it has good things to offer: attainable housing, business and employment opportunities, health services, and good transportation. Good schools, arts, culture, sports, recreation, parks, and natural spaces too. Red Deer, the city we all call home, is important to us. What our city has to offer is key to our future. We are on the cusp of so many great opportunities in our city. It's an exciting time for Red Deer. We have great momentum. Just think about what's happening. We have riverfront development opportunities. Our Red Deer Regional Airport now has 60 scheduled passenger flights a week, and the recent launch of Air Canada flights opens new doors for our region. Red Deer College has plans for growth. Imagine the possibilities when we have full university status and a top-rate technology and trades school combined right here in Red Deer. Good things are happening in our city with new small businesses opening up. We have a healthy business climate. Our population is growing, and add to all of this a major expansion at Nova Chemicals. It's incredible. I am a leader with the courage to move our city forward. I see 3 key areas to take action on that will make our city an even better place. Firstly, and I've already alluded to this, work with private sector investors to redevelop the Riverlands and Rail Yards areas and intensify land use in the city's core. The city has an important role to play in facilitating this and will benefit from an expanded tax base. These areas will become great places to live, to work, and to play. Secondly, identify key areas of investment, game changers, if you will, which would lead to increased opportunity for business development and investment by private sector. Thirdly, work with the community and potential partners to build much-needed recreation and cultural facilities in our city. With our central location, we have huge opportunities for growth in tourism in the sports areas. We need to be responsible with tax dollars and work to find the right solutions. But the reality is we're falling behind. Many cities have made these investments. They have found a way to do it, and we can too. We need to work together, the community, provincial and federal governments, to achieve these goals. Now you might be thinking, I'm a bit too optimistic, that I have rose-colored glasses on. Well, I am incredibly excited about the potential for our city. I am also well aware of the challenges. Let me outline some of what I see in front of us. Sometimes our opportunities are also our challenges. There is no doubt that it will be difficult to balance the needs and wants of a growing city with our ability to fund them. A sound financial plan must be in place. We will need to be creative and strategic and look to our partners, including the private sector and other levels of government, for help in achieving our work. Ensuring that our city is an affordable place to live is important work for council. Many of the decisions we make at the municipal level help alleviate and reduce poverty in our city. I believe we've begun to make some changes, necessary changes, including work on our neighborhood design that will result in a wider range of housing options being available and better land use. Our mobility study, providing people with viable transportation options, and upcoming transit master plan are also positive steps. We can improve our transit service. It needs to be more frequent. Our delivery model and hours of operation need to be reviewed. Transit is essential. It makes living in our city more affordable and enhances quality of life for many of our citizens. Council needs to make sure all citizens have access to our amenities, including libraries, recreation, and cultural programs. Safety and crime are certainly ongoing challenges. This council has highlighted safety and crime in our strategic direction. Just recently, we completed work on policy to set standards for our police service, and I'm hopeful that we'll begin to see the results of that work on our streets as those changes are implemented. Crime is a complex problem, and I support our approach in working from both the preventative side and the responsive and enforcement side. As Red Deerians, we all have a role to play. Our environment, our water, our air, our soil is also on the agenda. Cities can take the lead on many fronts. Our city has just completed a new environmental master plan and solid waste management plan. This work will help move us forward. There are many opportunities for council to provide input into federal and provincial policies, and it's important for us to be active on these files. Encouraging conservation and good stewardship of our resources is good practice. I think our biggest challenge is keeping up with those of you who want us to do more on the environment and having the capacity to act. We have to find the right balance and be clear on the consequences of what we choose to do and of what we choose not to do for today and for tomorrow. We need to work with our regional municipal partners in Central Alberta on issues which will affect the quality of service to our citizens. Together, we need a strong, shared vision for regional services for Central Alberta, including in the areas of ambulance dispatch and emergency services delivery. We need to be responsible leaders in this process. Lastly, and perhaps one of our biggest challenges, is our need to work with our provincial government to create a clear vision and understanding of the important role of municipalities in our province. Cities, in particular, play a critical role in Alberta's economy. We need to work toward a shared vision for strong cities in a strong province, and then clarify the roles and responsibilities for each level of government. Building a great city isn't something one person can do single-handedly. It takes good relationships, partnerships, and commitment to a shared vision. As mayor, I would work to establish relationships with each member of council and encourage them in their work. It's important that we have diversity of opinion, respect, and open discussion at the table. Council needs to be a strong team to make good decisions. A good relationship between council and administration and city staff is also vital. I believe my experience on council, my service as chairman of the Red Deer Public School Board, give me strong foundation to do this job, and 26 years of marriage and 21 years of parenting probably help too. In closing, I ask for your support to be Mayor of Red Deer on October 21st. Please vote Cindy Jeffries.
Good evening. My name's Chad Mason, and I'm running for Mayor of Red Deer. If elected, I would work hard to serve the people of Red Deer. If not elected, I will be thankful for the conversations I had during this campaign and the lessons that I've learned. I'd like to talk about 3 topics this evening. I'd like to talk about public service, the municipal debt, and the role of government. Public service, I think, is all about serving the people. We have to remember that it is City Hall's job to both serve the taxpayers, the voters, and the citizens. They are the customers. It involves a thorough perlustration of all city departments, and I believe it involves a review of council pay and council remuneration. On the topic of municipal debt, I'd like to talk about the story of the debt. So since 2007, we've seen a run-up in the debt, and it involves, well, the government can spend whatever it wants. It just has to raise the money for it. So if we decide to elect a council who would like to spend more, and they would not like to use debt, they simply have to go to the taxpayers and tell them that because we are going to spend more, therefore taxes will be raised. The only way for council to spend more and not raise the taxes is to go into debt, and that's what's happened. Since 2007, the debt has increased, and now in 2015 or 16, and I'd like to read right from the capital plan, in current dollars, or in 2015-16, projected debt per capita will not exceed, between 2013 and 2022, debt per capita estimated to peak at $3,374 in 2015. And they compare this to 1983, where the city's debt was $1,559. And inflation adjusted, it is not expected to exceed that peak. But how likely is that when we listen to other people's campaigns, whether the promises that they make, who's willing to stop the current trend in the debt? The debt has to be the primary focus for anyone who wishes to lead this city. So how will we reduce debt? Well, it involves either raising taxes or spending less. So everyone knows the taxes that they pay. Would you like to spend more in taxes? I don't know if that's possible. I think the current trend, to be fiscally prudent, will have to keep the current trend. So therefore, the only way to pay down the debt is to make sure we try to save more in some place. So where are the areas we can save? There's certain city departments I think we need to look at to find savings: legislative services, engineering services, social planning, inspections and licensing, environmental services, electricity, lighting and power, human resources, revenue assessment, and information technology services. Together, all those departments make up about 19% of the budget. I think specific places where we can find savings is canceling the integrated movement study. I've watched a video on it. I think it's, personally, my view is that it's bike lane propaganda. I think we need to cancel parts of the economic development strategy. A lot of it is I'll give you an example. Strategy 1A, capitalizing on Red Deer's central location. Is this new to anybody? Did anybody realize that we're not in the center of Edmonton and Calgary? This is estimated annual cost $55,000 to tell people that we live in the middle of Edmonton and Calgary. I think we're also going to have to look at major construction issues. The redesign of Ross Street and Taylor, I think, is one of those. We already have an intersection there. Do we really need to redesign it? It doesn't work perfectly, but it does work. And as a growing city, we'll need the money for other areas. Another issue is the 50-meter pool. I think decreasing our debt after 2015 and the 50-meter pool are two mutually exclusive issues. We can't do both at the same time. Therefore, I think it would be prudent to save up over the next 4 years or try to find savings so that a future council make a decision on the 50-meter pool. I don't think we can do it now. It will be hard to save money, but it's a sacrifice we have to make. Finally, I'd like to talk about the role of government. Resources are limited and human wants are unlimited. We can't have a government that always tries to do more for everybody. The services provided by the government must be defined and limited. I think the role of government is crystallized with the issue of bike lanes. You know, we already have the roads, so are they trying to tell us we're supposed to bike more? Or, you know, bikes are already allowed on the road, so I don't see why they need special lanes. I think it's a special interest agenda there, and I think the government should just allow people to the majority of us drive. That's a fact of modern life, and 81% of the people don't want new bike lanes, so I think the people have spoken on that issue. Again, I thank you for your time. I hope you consider my mayoral candidacy. I'm running to restore the simple virtues back to municipal government: efficiency, humility, modesty, and thrift. Thank you very much. Consider voting Mason for Mayor 2013.
Good evening. Thank you for the organizers for putting this on. Thank you for the water. And thank you for all you here and fellow candidates. Let's get down to business. Let's start with Red Deer. Let's just assume that Red Deer's a great place to live. That's why I live here. That's why I raised my family here. And you've heard some really good things about Red Deer, so I'm going to make that assumption. See, I want a Red Deer where the streets are safe, where the taxes are low, and we have a high quality of life. I think all of you want that too. But before we go there, we got to deal with some problems. First one is, primarily, why do we have to worry about getting broken into or robbed? I've had that happen twice to me. Look to your neighbor if you want to find out about that. Why is organized crime and drugs so prevalent in this city? I want to do a little survey right here, right now. If you've been broken into, or you know somebody is broken into, could you please raise your hand? Look around you. I mean, this is real, folks. We got to solve a problem. Second one I want to talk about is how we spend money. Chad mentioned debt. I'm going to be mentioning debt. We got to talk about taxes, and we really got to face some of the wasteful spending that's been going on. Bike lanes is going to come up over and over and over because it's an example of how your tax dollars are being wasted. And somebody tell me why potholes and snow removal is still an issue. It's an issue every election. We have to solve this once and get it solved. It's not hard. I want to share my qualifications and show you what I've done and what I am able to do, but we don't have time. My resume is online, so we're going to have to get right down to the crux of the matter. Let's first talk about safety and security. You can go look at CSI Index. Canadian government will show you what that is. You can go to Maclean's. They'll tell you we're number one in crime. You can talk to your neighbors like I just showed you, but we don't have to despair. There's ways to solve this. You get the right stakeholders in the room, and you use tools, and there's things called decision trees. I'm going to give you an example. Let's make an assumption Red Deer has a crime problem. You ask why. Why do we have a crime problem? Maybe organized crime is sitting up here. So you keep asking these questions over and over. Why is organized crime setting up here? Maybe Red Deer's a good place for crime business. Why is Red Deer a good place for crime business? Because maybe the RCMP are overloaded. Do you know what the stats are? They're almost twice as overloaded as most RCMP divisions. 202 criminal cases per 1,000 citizens. The provincial average is 139. Let me go on. Maybe, why is the RCMP overloaded? Maybe we didn't budget properly. Might come down to money. I want to send a message, and this is the message. Red Deer is not open for business for organized crime. We got to send that. Let's go down to fiscal responsibility because I just talked about the budget. Council has a tool, and that tool to control money and how it's spent is called the budget. Otherwise known as the buck stops here. Council and mayor is responsible, actually they're accountable for how they spend your tax dollars. I'm going to deviate for a minute and I'm going to go into debt because it's very important. $250 million by the end of this year. That's how much debt we have. Every time we want to fund something or have a new pool or a new whatever we're building, we've got to look at this debt now. 9 years ago, it was $20 million. Now it's $250 million. Who's going to pay it off? When does it stop? Ceilings aren't the answer. I'm going to tell you why. There's this thing called Parkinson's Law in business. It says this: expenditures rise to meet income. So if you set a ceiling, whether it's the provincial government or else we do it, guess what we're going to do? You're going to rise that debt right up to that ceiling, and then what? And then what? Then you got to deal with it. Folks, I'm telling you, let's deal with it right now. Let's put a stop to this. I want to read something that comes right out of the website, and it's a great website, by the way, for the City of Red Deer. It says this: debt financing is a responsible method for funding projects. That means we're budgeting for debt. That means we're planning for debt. That means debt is built into the system, and if you don't believe me, go online, you can do it yourself. Every capital project is using long-term debt. Here's another one. Debt allows for citizens who benefit from the project to pay for the project, bracket, intergenerational bracket. You see what I'm saying? Would you pass your debt on to your children and grandchildren? That's what's being planned. Intergenerational. I wouldn't do it. There's something fundamentally wrong here. Listen, I'm going to go to another, what I think should happen for council soon. 2 new constraints. The first constraint is no debt increase. Look, in business, we see something that's called sunk cost. We got to deal with this, but let's not let it grow, and let's have a plan to pay it off. By the way, there are times when you need to get into debt, but they should be exceptions, not systematic. Second new constraint, no more tax increases. We're at 4.28 last year. Let's get that down to maybe 4% next year. Maybe after that we can get into the 3s. Let's trend that down to 0. It's not going to happen in 4 years, but we can do it. All it is living within your means. I coined a phrase called 4 is 0. I think in 4 years we can start trending to 0. 2 constraints we got to live with. And that's how we're going to spend our money. So I don't have time to get into other things that I'd like to really talk about, solutions. I invite you to ask me them through the question and answer period. I'll just mention them real quick. We need to prioritize our essentials. We need to assume inefficiency in everything, every department, maybe even the RCMP. Even the superintendent online said we can do things better. Everybody can do things better. And there's best practices that we can find to even capitalize on that as well. Zero-based budget reviews. Look at every line item on the budget to make sure that we're spending properly. And you know what we're going to find? There's stuff we don't need to spend anymore. And you know what else? Maybe this department's got to grow a little bit, and maybe this one's got to give and take. Things change, and technology comes in to make it better. I have to finish. Thank you for that. I have more to say. I'm sorry I get passionate about this. Thank you very much.
Community friends, I'm grateful for the privilege you've given me over the past 9 years to represent you on your council, over the course of which I have been a strong advocate for common sense, citizen-minded local government. My name is Tara Veer, and I'd like to express sincere gratitude to the leadership, staff, and volunteers of the Red Deer Public Library for hosting this evening's debate. Throughout this election campaign season, I've been asked many questions about my hopes for our city of the future, my campaign platform, and my council record. At the farmers market, a citizen asked me my favorite book and literary character, a question I thought was insightful as it provides a window into one's personal world view. Given our venue this evening, I thought it appropriate to open with this insight, especially given the fact that I'm an avid, lifelong reader. One of my long-standing favorites is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, given the book's themes that everyone has a different perspective and that both people and things are not always as they seem. My favorite character is Atticus Finch, given that he was a man of both justice and mercy, one who gave voice to the voiceless and demonstrated personal courage even when it was difficult to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, past work ethic, attitude, and decision-making are a strong indication of the work ethic, attitude, and decision-making that a candidate will bring to a new position of elected responsibilities. Throughout my past 3 council terms, I have consistently demonstrated that I am an industrious worker, passionate about our community, and personally committed to representing the people of Red Deer well. My 9 years of council experience, various council leadership positions such as my 4-year role as audit committee chair, government leadership appointments such as my work on the negotiations committee on behalf of the city with the Native Friendship Society, and my community leadership roles as chair of the Immigrant Women's Security Project and advisory role in establishing youth substance addictions treatment have all solidly equipped me to be the strong, effective, and community-minded leader that Red Deer needs. I invite you to view my complete platform strategies and focus areas that I would like to pursue on your behalf in the coming term of office. veerforreddeer.ca will give you a sense of my more general views on emerging public issues, as well as specific areas of concern for you, such as debt, bike lanes, and vehicle noise. It also outlines the depth of my work and education experience, council record, and community contributions. Should you give me a mandate as your next mayor, I will continue to work with the people of our community, next council, city staff, and regional partners to make progress along the following 5 themes, many of which I have already laid foundations for during my past terms of office. Theme 1, accountability, accessibility, and transparency of local government. Theme 2, citizen safety and welfare protection. Theme 3, economic growth and fiscal responsibility. Theme 4, protect our natural and integrate our built environment. And Theme 5, mobilize our community will to make the possibilities happen. For years, our city has in many respects defensively highlighted our significance as a city. In my view, framing ourselves only as the third largest city has not been an as effective strategy as it could be, because we've been defining our community identity relative to the urban centers to the north and south, instead of positioning ourselves as the city of choice in the heart of our province. When we send our athletes to the Olympics, we do not settle at the outset for a participation card, but strive for the best position possible. As mayor, I would endeavour to reframe our current position as Alberta's third largest city to become Alberta's city of business and people choice by better capitalizing on our prime geographic position and actively branding and marketing Red Deer to maximize our potential for business growth as well as sports, trade and meeting, and adventure tourism. For our community to be a contender in the eyes of our fellow Albertans, the government, and potential business and individuals who want to locate here but just don't know it yet, we need to prioritize our community image and proactively pursue our community interest to various public and private sectors. Community friends, we all know that campaign promises, commitments, and posturing are plentiful. The best choice for our city in all elected offices are those who you intuit will keep their word to you, who are mindful of you throughout their term, and not just during election campaign season when you have nearly 50 people vying for your attention, favor, and vote. My focus for 9 years has been the best interests of the people. The mandate I seek from you is ultimately more about a greater commitment to public service to you and the responsibility to influence the future of our community with you. Your next mayor needs to be many things, including being the leader of council and one who is able to win the respect and cooperation of your future councillors, an ambassador who will become a source of civic pride for all Red Deerians in representing you to our citizens, a sound and decisive decision maker who weighs and analyzes issues with great responsibility, and an influencer, one who can bring the people together in order to accomplish initiatives that would otherwise prove to be too significant or cost prohibitive if we ventured to do so alone. My perspective on council has been unique, and Red Deer has an opportunity to join and surpass the ranks of other communities that have elected vibrant, young, experienced, capable, intelligent, energetic, visionary, and focused leaders who are committed to the best interests of the people they are tasked and trusted to represent. In any organization or community, the leader sets the tone. If you desire a leader who has proven herself to be a genuine advocate of the people, a proud ambassador for Red Deer, a strategic and wise decision maker, and a committed public servant, then I ask for your consideration of support so that I may invest the next 4 years in service to you. I am confident, Red Deer, that the best is yet to come. Thank you.
Okay. So what we'll do now is we will start with a question that we received via email from Brad Keith. It's a little bit lengthy, his preamble, so please be patient. A living wage is the amount of income that an individual or family requires to meet their basic needs, to maintain a safe, decent standard of living in their communities, and to save for future needs and goals. He quotes from Vibrant Communities, Calgary, 2012. From British Columbia to Nova Scotia, many employers are now working with advocates to adopt living wage policies. New Westminster, BC, became the first municipality in Canada to officially become a living wage employer in 2012. Kamloops, Calgary, Grand Prairie, Saskatoon, Kingston, and dozens of other Canadian cities are actively engaged in living wage discussions. They are joining close to 150 jurisdictions in the United States and have adopted living wage policies. Recognizing that working family should earn enough to avoid living in poverty and that a living wage offers many benefits, including improved health outcomes, decreased reliance on government programs, enhanced community pride, and healthier local economy, I would like to know where the candidates stand on a living wage for Red Deer. Tara, I would like to begin with you. Why did you move to sever any reference to a living wage from the poverty and living wage notice of motion at the September 3rd council meeting? So we'll start with you, Tara.
Thanks for the question. First off, I have a strong social policy record on council. The Minister of Municipal Affairs appointed me to the Alberta Affordable Housing Task Force. I also am vice chair of the Intercity Forum on Social Policy, and the chair appointed me to the Alberta Action to End Poverty Association, so I've been doing provincial work on a provincial poverty reduction plan. Council had brought forward a motion recently. There was specific parts of that motion that I severed out the living wage clause from the motion. I supported the main motion, which identified the city's role in terms of working with the Central Alberta Poverty Reduction Alliance in order to help make some headway with respect to issues of poverty in our community. But I severed out the living wage because I think what we need is a plan in our community. What I didn't like about that specific motion is that it was jumping exclusively to one outcome without public consultation. And we all learned during the whole bike lanes debate, when we jump to one specific conclusion without general public consultation, it divides our community. With respect to the living wage, ultimately wages are of provincial jurisdiction. To me, if we didn't consult with our business community, and we have small businesses, that would, what I was concerned about is that we would have net job loss if they were required to pay a higher wage outside of provincial mandate. We would undermine our regional economic competitiveness when we have businesses on the border of our city to the north and the south and the west specifically, where it is already cheaper to buy land. The county has cheaper land, cheaper taxes, cheaper off-site levies. So we would actually undermine our competitive position as a community if we just snapped our fingers and said we're just going to do a living wage within our borders. So I felt that we needed to pursue a broader community plan, not jump to one sense of conclusion. I think poverty is obviously something that we all care about. My personal record demonstrates my commitment to that, but I wasn't willing to shoot ourselves in the foot on it so that we could all feel good about passing a motion during election season and so that our names would look good in the paper. So it took courage to not do it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hello again. Let me tell you a bit about myself. I'm going to take a line from The Who. I was born with a plastic spoon in my mouth. It wasn't silver. I grew up in a steel town in Ontario. Okay, now I admit it. But I've been in Alberta for 30 years of true blue Albertan. But listen, I tell you that because I know what it means to have very little. I've been there, and I can empathize with that. I grew up in a large family, and frankly, we didn't have much at all. So I have sympathy for anybody who struggles. I've struggled. And I know a lot of friends of mine and family have struggled too. So that aside, let me just get to the point. What we need to understand, because all of these things are going to be asking for money. In the end, that's what it comes down to. That's where the decision comes. Now, there's things that we can do to help that doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money. There's great organizations around here. I've been down to Loaves and Fishes and some of those organizations, and you know about them. These are the organizations that come forth, from religious organizations and that really make a difference in our community. You don't have to spend a lot of money to help. I know that. So all I'm trying to say is I will be the protector of your tax dollars and take into account everything And by the way, some of these jurisdictions around wages and prices and things, this is municipal government. Really, isn't this provincial government matters? We have to understand where we fit into the picture and where we don't. Because if we're duplicating efforts from another government agency, we got to be careful there. If we're cooperating with them, that's fine. I just want to end with not a solution, but maybe an idea. Henry Ford, he was famous for the Model T, the Model A. He was famous for production line assembly of cars, right? And everybody thinks that the greatest thing he's ever done was build a car, you know, the Model T, or build whatever he did. The greatest thing that Henry Ford ever did was he gave a $5 a day? Yes, it was. Thank you. Yes. Corrected again by some $5 a day wage. It was unheard of. And you know what he did? He built a middle class. And everybody could buy those cars. And that's how America started to become wealthier, and let's say just North America, because we're North Americans. You know, that's the way I think we got to do this. Not just give money out, but hand up. You know, let's do it that way. Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're
Okay,
going to pass along. Chad?
Let's just start.
I know.
So I'm going to repeat a lot of what Dennis said. I think this demonstrates the redundancies in different levels of government. We have a municipal government, we have a provincial government, we have a federal government. They don't need to be duplicating each other's work. What's the difference between a livable wage and a minimum wage? Why don't we have a survival wage? Why don't we, different layers. We have a minimum wage. This has already been set. We have a provincial government we pay lots of money to. We elect people to make these decisions. It's their responsibility. Municipal government has enough to do. We have to look after roads. We have our CMP, right? The communities that have this, obviously, they don't have enough to do. If they're twiddling their thumbs and come up with, oh, we have to have a livable wage, right? What's the difference between a livable wage and a minimum wage? Can anybody answer that question, right? If you can't, it's just redundant, right? I don't think our city should be spending any time on this. We elect decent people to go to Edmonton to make these decisions. Let them do their job, and let's focus on our job. Our job is not to decide what a livable wage is. I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, but it's the truth.
I tend to differ. I think it's our discussion around the living wage, and communities that I know who are using the living wage use it as a lens and that's one way that they look at their community and the affordability of living within their community. I think that's a useful tool for us to understand and for us to share with businesses and employers in our community. Minimum wage is one thing, but what it really costs to live in a city might well be another. It's important for us to understand and recognize if there's a difference. For me, the whole issue of poverty is very complex, and I have attended several very good speakers, listened to several very good speakers on poverty, including a panel with Hugh Segal and Art Eglinton, and they both have done tremendous amount of work on poverty and the true costs of poverty to our society. When we factor in what it costs to keep someone living in poverty, when we think about the potential that they fail to fulfill because we hold them in poverty, we recognize that there are many more costs that are not always just dollars and cents that come with maintaining people, keeping people in situations of poverty. And the cycle continues. We know families, when children are raised in families with severe poverty, that poverty often continues, and not all of us manage to rise out of that. So I think that it's important. It's an important lens for us to use. It's one of the tools that we can have in our toolbox to assess livability in our city and to make wise decisions to support the people in our community. Because if we don't look after them on one end with a decent wage, we'll look after them on the other end with social services, agencies that are needed, and other care, whether it be hospital or mental illness facilities as well. Thank you.
I'm kind of in agreement with Cindy to some extent. The minimum wage here in Alberta is probably the lowest in Canada. It probably stems from the time when the Honourable Ralph Klein was in Calgary and he was giving people free bus tickets home. If you didn't want to work, he didn't want you. Right now, we have the highest average wage in Canada, and I think that we can do something to help some of these people. The living wage debate was taken up by Buck Buchanan. I was in council that day and listened to him as he lobbied the different people. It is definitely a problem here, and the costs associated to it come out of all our pockets. We have a social responsibility to improve everyone's life, and we must do something with the minimum wage in Alberta. It's definitely set too low. There's great opportunity here, but there's also problems that we have to address right within our city. Thank you.
So now we'll take a question from the audience.
My name is Jerry. My name is Jerry Anderson, and my question in particular is to the two councillors running for mayor. Excuse me. With your self-proclaimed proven track records, why are we still so far in debt? And why do we continue to go that way? The other day, I come out of my house with all the professional people we have on staff at the city, all of the journeyman people we have on staff at the city, and we had an electrical contractor changing light bulbs. Where is the fiscal responsibility in that?
Well, it's a long story. If you think back to a few years, actually think back prior to 9 years ago, our city, for a period of many years, we saw 0% tax increases. We actually, in effect, had a rollback on taxes because many of the debentures that the city had that came to an end, that they matured, instead of taking the money that had been contributed to pay off those debentures, we actually rolled that back into general revenues and subsidized the tax system once more. So we actually, in effect, went backwards. Over a period of many years, we sat at zero. For the first few years that we were on council, Tara and I were both elected in 2004, and for the first number of years, we spent many budgets trying to address some of those issues, some of the infrastructure needs that we had neglected in those times, and certainly including maintenance on infrastructure and on assets that the city currently owns. So there was a lot of catch-up to do. Running a city is complex. Keeping all of the assets of the city that all of the citizens own in good shape is important work. And we know as homeowners how difficult it is to keep one house going, never mind all of the infrastructure that the city has, including roads and amenities. So it's more complex than I can perhaps go into in an answer like this. But I believe we are in good fiscal position, that we are well managed. We certainly have excellent staff within our departments that look after our money for us. When the city takes on debt, we do it with a plan. We do it with a plan to pay back that debt, and we do it so that we spread the cost of an asset over the generations who will enjoy that asset, not necessarily sharing the debt with the next generation. But for those who are using it, and gaining benefit from the amenity, they will help to pay for it, rather than paying for it, gathering a savings account over years and years and years, and never getting to enjoy it.
that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the question, Jerry. I've been chairing our audit committee for the past 4 years. I think that my council record is very strong on financial matters, and I have strong ideas that I'm proposing in my mayoral platform as well. I was chair of the audit committee, which recommended establishing a clear financial reserve strategy for funding reserves. I was chair of the same audit committee, which recommended a value for money audit on the city's utilities to council. And I received council support on a motion to formalize a maximum self-imposed ceiling to the city's prescribed debt limit. So the province of Alberta dictates to municipalities, based on your revenue, how much debt you can safely go into. The trend throughout Alberta municipalities is to go above and beyond that prescribed debt limit. So I saw the writing on the wall. There were members of our council who were talking about, why don't we go more into debt? So what I did is, the city for years has had a practice of not going above the 90% of that debt limit that the province set. So it's similar if the bank said you could have $1 million mortgage. Instead of maxing out to that $1 million mortgage, we put in a ceiling at 90%. So you would, instead of being Houseport, well, that's a ridiculous number, so I won't use that example. The reason I chose 90% is that had been the city's practice to date. I didn't think that there was political will on council to go further than that. What I've proposed in my mayoral platform is to reduce that ceiling to 75%, to protect the city's interests with respect to being able to respond to emerging issues in the future. But we can still fulfill our 10-year capital plan at that ceiling. Right now, our city's debt limit is around 50% of what the province says that we can. I tend to be a strong fiscal conservative. I have a strong record on that front. The writing on the wall, I don't agree with Alberta municipalities in that trend, because we have to be able to afford the debt servicing. And if we're building new facilities, we have to be able to afford the operating costs, which is often where the direct tax impact is. One other thing that I've proposed is, it was anticipated that the city would reach that peak debt in 2015, so to that maximum 90% debt limit. Over the past few years, we have reduced that. We've deferred some capital projects. So right now, it's anticipated that instead of 2015 reaching that peak debt, we will now reach it to the 73% threshold. So we can do it, so we can become more fiscally conservative without trading that off for an infrastructure deficit. And then over time, we can shift to pay-as-you-go capital, so that we have capital savings and reserves, so that we can do a lot of our quality of life and amenity projects up front. Some of the debt is utility-supported debt. That's our regional partners have a portion of that. And that type of debt we share over time and with our regional partners on those longer projects.
Thank you.
I didn't ask about debt or debt services. I asked why we're hiring contractors to do jobs we're paying city employees to do. Can I help answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
I heard that. Jerry? I heard that.
Yeah.
But you did mention debt at the start. And I'll just add to the debt, and I've said it already, it doesn't matter what the ceiling is. If it's 90%, if it's 75%, you're going to hit it. And it's going to grow. Ceilings don't work. You got to stop it. To answer your question about changing a light bulb or whoever was doing it, that's inefficiency. My assumption is there's an inefficiency everywhere. There's also best practices, but you know what? Things can't just stay the same. They got to change. And that's an example of something that might have to change. And we need input like that back to council. We need to hear the good, we need to hear the bad, and sometimes we need to hear that ugly that he just said and deal with it.
Okay, what we're going to do now is I'm going to read a question we received from Twitter from @RGHolt. To all candidates, would you revisit the Native Housing and Cultural Centre planned as it is on a floodplain? So we will start with William.
I actually took the opportunity to go down to the Native Friendship Centre and talk to the CEO there. They would just like the mandate actually to sell that piece of land and look for their own property. They're worried about it being a floodplain. They're worried about it's the wrong area for that type of development. and they just like the mandate to go ahead, get ownership of the property, sell it, find their own piece of land, get approval, and go ahead with their project. That's what the natives of the city want. Thank you.
Go ahead, Cindy.
We'll just play pass the mic along. The Native Friendship Society, the cultural center and housing project that's proposed for the site on the river, the north side of the river, it's a difficult project to situate within our community because of the unique needs that the Native Friendship Society had for that project. They want to have a place where they can have cultural celebrations, including some bonfire opportunities in a more natural setting. That doesn't fit very well in a residential area. So as you know, Council went through a process, and Councillor Veer was part of that process on behalf of Council, to look for the best situation, the best location for that facility, for them to build, and arrived at the recommendation that came to Council. As you know, Council has approved the zoning that would allow that to happen. It's now up to the Native Friendship Society to determine whether they do want to go ahead or not. We certainly have done engineering studies to see that it is acceptable to build there. Even on the new provincial flood maps, it is not within the flood zone. And we believe that construction is possible there. That is up to the Native Friendship Society. As for the Native Friendship Society wanting to perhaps sell that land and move to another spot, I think that would be a discussion for Council. In my view, Council rezoned that land for one purpose, and I would not see us allowing that land to be sold for another purpose for someone else to come along and build there and give that up. I would think that we would have to look for another parcel for them and relocate that way, because I don't think that I want to see development go there unless it's the one that we've approved. Thank you.
I think regarding the Native Friendship Society, I think we need to move past this notion of treating special ethnic groups. You know, there's many ethnicities in this city, right? There's Filipino communities. Are we going to, as council, going to spend any time talking about a Filipino community hall of some nature? Or there's already buildings available for if they would like to have events there, and there's parks available. There's open spaces, and I think it's destructive for our government to talk about or even single out one group of people and give them special interest. And I think it's important to recognize that we're all different. We all come from different places, and we all have different ethnic heritages. But I just there's so many ethnic groups. I don't see why council needs to devote so much time to one group. I don't think it's healthy for that group. I think it'd be better if they rented any other hall like any other ethnic group would. Right? Thank you.
When you don't have all the facts, you really can't make a decision, right? You gotta know what's going on. This is a situation for me that I don't have all these facts before me, but I know how to solve problems. If this is a problem with land, the way you do it is you get all the stakeholders involved. You get the native leaders involved, you get council involved, you might have to get the government involved. You get them in a room and you figure this out. I'm going to take a little page from what Chad just said. It's got to be fair for everybody. No special interest groups. We're all in this together, and we got to be fair about it. I'm going to tell you something about myself. My great-grandmother was full-blood Algonquin Indian. So I think if you look around and you go to your genealogy, probably some of you have that in your blood too. We're Canadian, right? Because, anyways, all I'm trying to say is let's be fair about this. Let's get the information before us, and let's make a decision when we know what the facts are.
This debate made actually goes back a little bit further than the proposed site at the Lions Campground. The Aboriginal community had received some funding years back to build their cultural centre and housing project on the Clearview Ridge site. Council went through a rezoning application with that and denied that request due to opposition from the neighbours. It had been planned there for many, many